The text from my dad came at 3:14 a.m. Don't answer the doorbell. Call 911 if it rings. Trust me. 20 seconds later, our doorbell rang, and through the peephole, I saw my Aunt Valora standing there, covered in blood. My name is McKenna Hayes, and what happened that night in December changed everything I thought I knew about family. I'm 22 years old, home from Northwestern for winter break, and I'd been asleep in my childhood bedroom when my phone lit up on the nightstand. The specific time is burned into my memory because I'd been staring at my alarm clock, unable to sleep, watching it flip from 3:13 to 3:14 when the buzz of Dad's text made me jump. My father, Garrett Hayes, had been a detective for 20 years before going private. He wasn't the type to send cryptic middle-of-the-night warnings. He was methodical, careful, the kind of man who explained everything twice to make sure you understood. So when I read those 9 words, my entire body went cold. Then came the doorbell. Not once, but twice in quick succession, followed by frantic knocking that echoed through our quiet suburban home. Through my bedroom window, I could see red and blue lights weren't here yet, but they would be soon. The street was still dark, still silent except for the sound of my Aunt Valora's voice calling my name from our front porch. "McKenna! Please, I need help. Something terrible has happened." Valora Hayes Mitchell was Dad's younger sister, 38 years old, a successful real estate agent who drove a white Mercedes and never had a hair out of place. But through that peephole, she looked like she'd walked out of a nightmare. Her white blazer was soaked in dark red, her perfect blonde bob was matted against her head, and she kept looking over her shoulder as if someone was chasing her. What she didn't know was that Dad had already warned me. What I didn't know was that she wasn't running from danger. She was bringing it straight to our door. I'd been home for exactly 3 days when everything went sideways. Cedar Heights, Michigan was the kind of suburb where people actually knew their neighbors' names, and the biggest scandal usually involved someone's lawn growing an inch too high. Our house sat on Maple Drive, a tree-lined street where kids still rode bikes until the streetlights came on, and where my mom's garden was the envy of the neighborhood. But something had been different since I'd arrived home on December 18th. Dad had picked me up from the airport, and instead of our usual chat about my classes or his latest case, he'd spent the entire drive checking his mirrors. "How's your apartment security?" he'd asked out of nowhere. "You're remembering to lock your windows, right? Even on the 3rd floor?" "Dad, I'm fine," I'd assured him, but he just gripped the steering wheel tighter. That first night home, I'd watched him install new locks on every door. The second night, he'd set up motion sensors in the backyard. By the 3rd night, he was testing security cameras that fed directly to his phone. Garrett Hayes had always been protective, but this was excessive even for him. "Your father's lost his mind," Mom had said that morning while flipping pancakes. Daphne Hayes was a pediatric nurse, practical and level-headed, the perfect balance to Dad's intensity. Ever since he took that private case last month, he's been acting like we're in witness protection. "What case?" I asked, pouring orange juice for my younger brother Zephyr, who was absorbed in his phone at the kitchen table. "Some insurance thing," Mom said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. "He won't tell me details. Says it's routine." Dad walked in then, his coffee mug already half empty despite it being only 7 in the morning. He looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that sits in your bones and shows in the shadows under your eyes. "Morning, family," he said, kissing Mom on the cheek and ruffling Zephyr's dark hair. "Dad, seriously, what's with Fort Knox?" Zephyr asked, finally looking up from his screen. At 17, my brother had Dad's height but Mom's gentle features. "You installed enough cameras to film a reality show." "Just being cautious, Zeph," Dad said, refilling his mug. "The world's getting complicated." "Insurance fraud isn't complicated," I pointed out. "It's usually just someone faking an injury or inflating damage claims." Dad's jaw tightened. "McKenna, please, just trust me on this. I need you all to be extra careful right now. Don't answer the door for anyone you don't know. Keep your phones charged, and if anything feels wrong, you call me immediately." "Garrett, you're scaring the kids," Mom said softly. "Good," he replied. "Scared keeps you safe." That conversation played in my mind all day. I tried to focus on wrapping Christmas presents and helping Mom bake cookies for her hospital fundraiser, but Dad's paranoia was contagious. I found myself checking locks and peering out windows, looking for threats I couldn't even name. That evening, Aunt Valora had called Mom about Christmas dinner plans. I could hear Mom's side of the conversation from the living room where I was reading. "Yes, Vel, we'll have the ham like always." "No, Garrett hasn't mentioned anything." "Are you bringing that green bean casserole?" "Oh, you're busy with work? Real estate must be booming." Nothing about that conversation suggested that in less than 8 hours, Valora would be standing on our porch covered in blood. Dinner that night was quiet. Dad barely touched his food, just pushed pot roast around his plate while scrolling through his phone. At one point, it rang, and he stepped outside to take the call. Through the kitchen window, I watched him pace the backyard, his free hand running through his graying hair over and over. "Is Dad okay?" Zephyr asked Mom. "He's working a difficult case," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Around 11, Dad announced he had to go out. "Surveillance," he said, grabbing his keys and his jacket. "Don't wait up." "Garrett," Mom started, but he was already heading for the door. "Lock everything behind me," he said. "And remember what I said about not answering the door." Those were the last words he spoke to us before everything changed. I went to bed around midnight, tossing and turning in sheets that smelled like my childhood. The house felt too quiet without Dad's presence, too vulnerable despite all his security measures. At 3:14 a.m., when that text arrived, I understood why he'd been so paranoid. He'd known something was coming. He just hadn't known it would come dressed as family, wearing my aunt's face and my blood on her clothes. The text made my blood run cold. Dad never texted me in the middle of the night. Never. I sat up in bed, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, rereading his message. "Don't answer the doorbell. Call 911 if it rings. Trust me." Before I could even process what I was reading, the doorbell rang. Once, twice, then persistent, frantic knocking that seemed to shake the entire house. "McKenna, please, I need help." It was Aunt Valora's voice, high-pitched and desperate, nothing like her usual confident tone. She sounded terrified, broken, like someone whose world had just shattered. I froze for exactly 3 seconds, then jumped out of bed. My phone showed 3:14 a.m. still, as if time had stopped. The hallway was pitch black, and I could hear Mom and Zephyr still sleeping in their rooms. Dad wasn't home. His surveillance work had taken him away at the worst possible moment, or maybe that was exactly why this was happening now. "McKenna, I know you're awake. I saw your light. Please, something happened to Garrett. Your dad is hurt." That made me move. I crept to my bedroom door, bare feet silent on the carpet, phone clutched in my sweaty palm. The house felt different in the darkness, full of shadows that shouldn't exist and corners that seemed to breathe. I made it to the top of the stairs, avoiding the creaky floorboard near the bathroom. "Please, they're coming. The men who hurt Garrett. They're following me." Every instinct screamed at me to help her. This was Valora, who had taught me to ride a bike, who brought me books every birthday, who let me stay at her apartment when Mom and Dad fought during their rough patch 5 years ago. But Dad's text burned bright in my mind. He'd known she would come. He'd warned me specifically. I tiptoed downstairs, avoiding the third step that always groaned under any weight. The front door had a peephole, one of those wide-angle ones Dad had installed last year. My hand trembled as I leaned close to look through it. Valora stood under our porch light, and she looked like she'd walked through hell. Her white blazer, the expensive one she'd worn to Thanksgiving, was soaked in blood. Dark red stains spread across the fabric like spilled wine. Her usually perfect blonde hair was matted to her head, streaks of red running through it. She pressed a cloth to her left shoulder, swaying slightly on her feet. She looked exactly like someone who'd barely escaped with their life. "Aunt Vel!" I called through the door, my voice barely steady. "What happened to Dad?" "Thank God, McKenna." There was an accident. No, not an accident. These men, they came to his office. They had guns. He tried to stop them, but they shot him. He told me to run, to come here, to get you all somewhere safe. My finger hovered over the deadbolt. Everything she was saying made sense. Dad had been paranoid about something dangerous. He'd gone out tonight alone. Now Valora was here, injured and terrified, saying he was hurt. But the text came before she arrived. How did Dad know she'd show up here if he was supposedly lying shot in his office? "Where is Dad now?" I asked. "The hospital." Ambulances came, but the men were still there. "McKenna, please, I'm bleeding and I think they followed me." That's when I saw it. Movement in my peripheral vision just beyond the porch light's reach. A shadow shifted near our garden shed, the one where Dad kept the lawnmower. It was subtle, but definitely human-shaped. Then another movement by the mailbox at the end of our driveway, a third shadow near Mom's rose bushes. Valora wasn't alone. She'd brought people with her. "Aunt Vel," I said, backing away from the door slowly, "I'm going to call 911 first, okay? To get help for Dad." Her response was immediate and sharp. "No, don't call anyone. They have contacts in the police. They'll know where we are. Just open the door, McKenna, now." The desperation in her voice had shifted to something else, something harder, something that sounded like frustration rather than fear. I looked through the peephole again and caught her glancing to her left, toward the garden shed, a small nod, barely visible, but definitely there. She was signaling someone. My hands shook as I pressed my back against the wall beside the door. Through the narrow window next to it, I could see more clearly now. There were at least 3 people in our yard, positioned strategically around the house. They were waiting for something, waiting for me to open that door. Dad had known. Somehow, he'd known exactly what would happen tonight, and his warning was the only thing standing between my family and whatever Valora had brought to our doorstep. I made my choice. Instead of opening the door, I pulled up the phone's keypad and dialed 911, pressing myself flat against the wall where Valora couldn't see me through the windows. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional, an anchor in the chaos. "Someone's at my door claiming to need help, but my dad warned me not to let them in," I whispered urgently. "There are people hiding in our yard." "At least 3 men. 1847 Maple Drive. Please hurry. I'm sending units now. Are you in immediate danger?" "I don't know. The woman at the door is my aunt, but something's wrong. She has blood on her clothes and says my dad is hurt, but he texted me before she got here warning me about her." "Stay on the line. Officers are 3 minutes out. Can you get to a safe room?" Through the peephole, I watched Valora's entire demeanor change. The desperate act dropped like a mask falling off. She stood straighter, rolled her injured shoulder with no sign of pain, and pulled out her phone. "She's not buying it," Valora said clearly into her phone. "The little brat must have been warned." Move to plan B. The blood on her jacket wasn't hers. The injury was fake. Everything was fake except the danger she'd brought to our house. Glass shattered in the kitchen. The sound exploded through the quiet house like a gunshot. Someone was breaking in through the back door, the one that led to Mom's herb garden. "Someone's breaking in through the back," I told the dispatcher while racing up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. "Where are your family members?" "My mom and brother are sleeping. My dad's not home." I burst into Mom's room, not caring about being quiet anymore. "Mom, wake up! Someone's breaking in." Daphne shot up instantly, her nurse's training kicking in. She went from dead asleep to fully alert in seconds. "Where?" "Kitchen. Valora's at the front door with blood on her clothes, but it's fake. Dad warned me. There are men outside." Mom's face went white, but she didn't waste time on questions. "Get your brother." "Master bathroom. Now." We'd practiced this. Dad's paranoia had included family safety drills that we'd all thought were excessive. The master bathroom was our safe room, reinforced door, no windows, and a phone line that didn't depend on the main connection. I ran to Zephyr's room while Mom grabbed something from under her bed. My brother was already awake, sitting up in confusion. "What's happening?" he asked, voice thick with sleep. "Bad people in the house. Bathroom. Now." To his credit, Zephyr didn't argue. He grabbed his phone and followed me. Heavy footsteps thundered on the stairs as we slammed the bathroom door behind us. Mom shoved a heavy cabinet against it while I kept the 911 dispatcher updated. "We're in a locked bathroom on the 2nd floor." Multiple intruders in the house. "Officers are 1 minute out. Stay quiet and hidden." We huddled in the bathtub, Mom clutching the baseball bat she'd grabbed from under her bed. Zephyr held my hand so tight it hurt. The footsteps were in the hallway now, multiple sets, moving systematically room to room. "Check everything," a male voice commanded. "They're here somewhere." A door slammed, then another. They were getting closer. Mom raised the bat, positioning herself between us and the door. "Mom," Zephyr whispered, "what's happening?" "Why is Aunt Valora doing this?" "The Corbin case," Mom breathed, so quiet I almost couldn't hear her. "Oh, God." Garrett was right. Before she could explain, someone tried our door handle. It rattled but held. A shoulder slammed against it. The cabinet scraped an inch across the floor. Then the most beautiful sound in the world. Sirens. Multiple sirens growing louder by the second, accompanied by screeching tires. "Police!" Everyone freeze. The house erupted in chaos. Shouting, running feet, doors slamming. Someone yelled, "Back exit!" Another voice shouted, "Too late!" Gunshots. 3 sharp cracks that made us all flinch and hold each other tighter. Mom pulled us down flat in the tub, her body covering ours. "Shots fired! Shots fired!" I heard through the dispatcher's radio chatter, more sirens, more shouting, the sound of people running through our house, commands being barked, radios crackling, then gradually it grew quieter. The storm was passing. A knock on the bathroom door made us all jump. "Mrs. Hayes, this is Officer Brennan. It's safe to come out." Mom recognized the voice immediately. "Tom? Tom Brennan?" "Yeah, Daphne. It's me, we've got them. You can come out." Dad's former partner from his detective days stood in our hallway in full tactical gear, looking grim but relieved. Our house had been transformed into a crime scene with officers everywhere, radios chattering and lights flashing through every window. Officer Brennan led us downstairs through what used to be our home but now looked like a war zone. The kitchen window was shattered, glass scattered across Mom's clean floor. Muddy boot prints tracked through the hallway. The front door stood wide open, cold December air rushing in, and through it I could see our front yard transformed into a parking lot of police cars, their red and blue lights painting our suburban street in colors it had never seen before. Aunt Valora sat in the back of a patrol car, handcuffs glinting under the streetlight. The blood on her white blazer was already drying to brown, and as an officer wiped her face with a cloth, I could see the theatrical makeup coming off in streaks. She looked smaller somehow, deflated, nothing like the confident woman who sold million-dollar houses and drove a Mercedes. "Where's my husband?" Mom demanded, her voice steady despite everything. "On his way," Brennan assured her. "He's fine." This was all coordinated. Before he could explain more, Dad's truck pulled up behind the police cars. He got out slowly, looking exhausted but unharmed, and the relief hit me so hard my knees almost buckled. Zephyr broke away from us and ran to him, something he hadn't done since middle school. "I'm okay, buddy," Dad said, holding him tight. "Everyone's okay." We gathered in our living room, which was miraculously untouched by the chaos. Detective Patricia Monroe from the FBI sat across from us, her badge visible, her expression serious but kind. Dad sat between Mom and me, his arm around Mom's shoulders. "The Corbin case," Detective Monroe began, "was never about insurance. Fraud. That was the cover story we created with your father's help." Dad picked up the explanation, his voice heavy. 6 weeks ago, a young woman named Sophia Corbin came to my office. She'd escaped from a trafficking ring that was moving people through real estate transactions. They were using high-end properties as temporary holding locations, moving victims through empty houses that were supposedly being shown to clients. My stomach turned. Valora sold high-end properties. She had access to empty mansions all over the state. "The paperwork trail led to your sister?" Mom asked, though it sounded like she already knew the answer. "She wasn't just involved," Dad said, jaw clenched. "She was running the financial side. Every fake buyer, every shell company, every laundered payment went through her. 3 years, Daphne. She's been doing this for 3 years. But tonight?" I asked. "Why come here like this?" Detective Monroe pulled out a tablet showing us intercepted messages. "Your father's investigation got too close. Valora discovered he was on to her yesterday afternoon. The plan was to eliminate your family and frame it as a home invasion. With your father being a former cop who made enemies, it would have been believable." "The blood on her clothes?" Zephyr asked. "Pig's blood," Monroe said. "She was supposed to appear as a victim who barely escaped the same attackers who killed you. She'd inherit everything, collect life insurance, and disappear before we could connect her to the trafficking ring." The room went silent as we absorbed this. My aunt, who'd hosted Christmas dinners and birthday parties, who'd helped me with college applications and taught me to drive, had walked up to our door planning to have us murdered. "How did you know she'd come tonight?" Mom asked Dad. "We intercepted communications yesterday indicating they were moving tonight. I couldn't tell you because we needed them to actually attempt it. We needed evidence of attempted murder to go with the trafficking charges," Dad explained. "The FBI was positioned around the neighborhood. I was in the command vehicle 2 blocks away. The moment Valora showed up, we had her." "You used us as bait," Mom said quietly. "I protected you," Dad countered. "I warned McKenna. I knew she'd be awake, knew she'd be smart enough to listen, and I had 20 agents ready to move the second anything went wrong." "The men in our yard?" I asked. 3 accomplices, all arrested," Monroe confirmed. 2 more were caught trying to flee in a van parked on Oak Street. The 7th member of the crew was arrested at Valora's house, destroying evidence. Brennan added, "The gunshots you heard were warning shots when one of them tried to run." No one was hurt. Dad turned to me then, his eyes soft. "You did exactly right, McKenna. You trusted my warning over what your eyes were seeing. That saved everyone." 17 total arrests across 3 states, Detective Monroe said. 43 victims recovered from various properties. The oldest was 32. The youngest was 14. 14. The same age I'd been when Valora taught me to drive in that same white Mercedes she'd bought with blood money. "She knew about the spare key," Dad said quietly. "The one we keep hidden under Mom's guardian angel statue. She was going to use it after you opened the front door, make it look like the attackers found it. Every family dinner, every holiday. She was studying our routines, our security, planning how to kill us if she needed to." The trial lasted 6 months. Valora got 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. She never looked at us during the sentencing, just stared straight ahead as the judge read out the charges: human trafficking, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and 14 other counts that blurred together in the courtroom's fluorescent lighting. When they led her away in shackles, she walked past our row without a glance, as if we had never existed, as if 22 years of birthdays and Christmases and family barbecues had been erased. The other 16 arrests resulted in sentences ranging from 10 to 30 years. The trafficking ring that had operated for 6 years across Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana finally crumbled. 43 victims were reunited with their families, started new lives, or began the long journey of healing. Sophia Corbin, the brave woman who'd walked into Dad's office and started this whole investigation, testified via video link from her new life in witness protection. Dad retired from private investigating the day after the trial ended. "Some cases extract too high a price," he told me, packing up his office. "I spent 20 years as a cop thinking the danger came from strangers. I never imagined it would come from someone who shared my childhood, my parents, my blood." But retirement didn't mean relaxation. If anything, Dad doubled down on home security. New cameras went up, better locks were installed, and a state-of-the-art alarm system that probably belonged in a bank vault became our new normal. This time, none of us complained. Mom redecorated the entire house that spring. "I need to reclaim our space," she said, painting over every wall, replacing every piece of furniture Valora had ever touched. The kitchen where the break-in happened got a complete renovation. New windows, new doors, new everything. She said it was about fresh starts, but I knew it was about erasing the memory of that night when our sanctuary was violated. Zephyr started sleeping with his baseball bat next to his bed. He never said anything about it, just casually leaned it against his nightstand every evening. He also started double-checking locks and watching cars that drove too slowly past our house. 17 is too young to learn that family can be your greatest threat, but he handled it with a quiet strength that made me proud. As for me, I changed, my major from business to criminal justice. That night had shown me that evil doesn't always wear a stranger's face. Sometimes it sits at your dinner table, laughs at your jokes, and remembers your birthday. But it also showed me that there are people, like Detective Monroe and Officer Brennan and my father, who dedicate their lives to stopping that evil, and I wanted to be one of them. The doorbell was replaced the following week with one that could be controlled through an app. Dad programmed it to automatically disable between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. No legitimate visitor comes in those hours, he said, and we all agreed. To this day, whenever it rings after dark, we all freeze for just a moment, remembering. We never talk about Valora at family gatherings anymore. Her photos disappeared from Mom's albums, her name vanished from conversations. It's as if she died that night, except death would have been cleaner, easier to mourn. Instead, we're left with the knowledge that she chose money over family, chose evil over love, chose to walk up to our door planning our deaths while wearing the mask of concern. Dad framed his old detective badge and hung it in his home office with a simple inscription beneath it. Family isn't always blood, but protection always is. He spends his days now consulting for the FBI on trafficking cases, using his experience to help other families avoid what we went through. Last week, I graduated from the police academy. Dad pinned my badge on my uniform, his hands steady, his eyes proud but worried. "You sure about this, Kenna?" he asked. "Someone has to stand between families and the monsters," I told him, "even when the monsters look familiar." Especially then. The text at 3:14 a.m. saved our lives. A father's instinct, a daughter's trust, and the courage to believe a warning over appearances. That's what stood between us and tragedy. In the end, blood didn't determine family. Love did. Protection did. Choice did. Valora chose wrong. We chose each other. And every morning when I wake up in my childhood bedroom, now painted a different color but still home, I'm grateful for that choice. If you found this story compelling, please hit that like button below. Share it with someone who needs to hear that trusting your instincts can save lives. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories of survival, family, and the choices that define us. Your support helps these important stories reach others who might need to hear them. Stay safe out there. And remember, when someone you trust tells you not to answer the door, you listen.